Welcome to vlog number 75. Now, the last time we saw each other was at vlog number 50, when I was almost at 1000 subscribers, and today we are celebrating 2000 subscribers. Now, at this moment it goes very fast with new subscribers, so actually at this moment I'm already at 2050 subscribers, but today is the Q&A to celebrate the 2000 subscribers. So for all those out of there who are my subscribers, thank you very much. This has been such a nice experience, and a lot of you are becoming almost like friends. I have some of you guys that we have regular conversations via email, and the first thing I do every morning is to look at my iPad, look at my channel and see if there is any new comments on there, because especially in these days of the pandemic, this channel has also meant a lot to me. I've read a lot of your comments that are so lovely, telling me that they like my channel, they love the content, and that it is an important part of their lives. But it's also the other way around. So really, thank you very much. And in order to thank you, I'm doing the Q&A, and today I'm making some coffee for you guys. Now, to be honest, I have done this video this morning already with the classical mistake of not pushing the recording button well enough. So this is the second time that I'm thanking you for today, and I wanted to remake the video right away, but this afternoon, the beginning of this afternoon, my ITOS equipment, which was out for repair, has been returned, and we have been listening to it. And we is the guy, Herman, who is also building these things. And we have been talking about the Q&A that we want to do about this, the ITOS equipment. But for today, I'm going to make you some coffee, and maybe in some of the vlogs you have seen this contraption. This is called a vacuum pot, and that is what I'm going to use today. So what you do is you put water in the bottom, you put coffee on top, somehow they will mix and they will make coffee. So while I'm doing this, because I'm going to show you all this, while I'm doing this I'm also answering some of the questions. Now, even though this is vlog number 75, I still know myself that if I start answering the questions just like this, I will forget a lot of the things that I would like to say. So what I did was I prepared the videos, I prepared the answers. I will read them out to you over here, and then we'll go into a little movie. In those movies you will also see my complete CD collection, and if you see the video you will understand what I mean. So this thing, what is it made of? So it has a glass carafe over here and one right over there that I'm going to put away for the moment. First thing is to fill the bottom carafe with water. And the amount of water that I'm using today is 600 milliliters, and I'm going to use 40 grams of coffee. And then I'm going to show you something magical, because I like this way of making coffee. I'm not using it a lot, but in times like Christmas, well, not this year of course, but in times like Christmas, this is a way of making coffee that you can do on the table where everybody is dining, and it's just a very interesting way of making coffee, and it looks spectacular, and that's what I'm going to show you. But well, step one, water. Let's also go to the first question. So the first question is by Terrywho22. This name might ring a bell because he was one of the guys that sent me some subscriber mail. And his question is, and he says maybe this is an easy one, but I can tell you this was not an easy one. So his question is, at what point did you realize you were an audiophile, and how have your tastes in music and gear changed over the years as a result of becoming an audiophile? So let's look at the answer. At what point did I become an audiophile? Well, that's a tough one. Let's start with the fact that there never was really one specific moment that I fell in love with audiophile gear. I know at a very young age I was into music, but I guess this may go for most children. But I do remember that at a very young age, when I got my weekly allowance from my parents, I was not spending it on candy, but on music, mostly vinyl records and cassette tapes. Remember, CDs did not exist yet. And I remember going to the record store multiple times a week to look through all the new releases and listen to them. So I looked and listened, and after much back and forth I decided what I wanted to buy. And this procedure is something that has always defined me. It takes me forever, and it still does. It takes me forever to decide what I will actually buy, especially when I buy new. And whether it was records or hi-fi equipment, I am not an impulse buyer. Now, in those early days, it was much more about the music and the artist, and equipment was something that was just in the living room, put there by your parents. But when I was about 10 years old, I remember that I demolished a few radios to take out the drivers. There were some 4 or 6 drivers, I don't remember exactly. But what I did was I bolted those drivers in a sort of surround sound setup on the wall by my bed, so when I was laying in bed I was surrounded by loudspeakers. And all of this was connected to my Akai stereo setup. So I guess that was an indication that I was becoming an audiophile. Another thing that I remember doing is that at one point I had one of those suitcase record players. You know, where the cover is also the loudspeaker, and in this case it was 2 loudspeakers. And one of the things I loved doing was to lay on the floor and put on a record. For example, Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind & Fire or Santana. At least those are some of the records I remember having in those days. So I laid on the floor and I would place the 2 loudspeakers on the floor, left and right, just like a big headphone, and I loved to listen to my music like that. There was no better way to be completely encased in the music. So I guess that was another indicator that I was becoming an audiophile. Now, the Akai Cube was probably my first attempt at a real system. And lastly, I remember that at a very young age I started reading audiophile magazines. I guess I was only 15 years old when I started buying and reading those magazines. Remember, we did not have the luxury of the internet at that time. Also, because I thought the quality of the Dutch magazines was not very good, I mostly bought the German audiophile magazines. And when I was 20 years old, I bought my first serious amplifier. So I guess that was pretty late, but as I told you, I always take my time before I spend my money, and it was a Sony integrated amp, and I think only when I was 24 years old I bought my first audiophile amplifier, which was the Musical Fidelity A1, an integrated Class A design. I think my love for tubes started with that Class A sound. Class AB just couldn't make me happy. And buying the Musical Fidelity probably took me a whole year of going to all the hi-fi shops and listening to a lot of different amps. So my audiophile life is not paved with new gear every year, but listening to a lot of gear and only buying a few things that really did it for me. So to go back to the question, did my gear change a lot throughout the years? No, it did not. But the focus on Class A or tubes became more and more apparent. And did my taste in music change? Yes. I started off with popular top 40 songs that you heard on the radio, but mostly that was because I come from a family that was not really into music. I did not get my musical influence from my parents, but from the radio. Especially when I started listening to other stations than just the few popular stations we had in the Netherlands, I started discovering new music. Now, at that time, I also got into jazz after hearing Miles Davis' Kind of Blue for the first time. It was gifted to me, but I can't remember who gave it to me. But this was a change where jazz music suddenly became something I wanted to explore. Now, to finish off this question, I think the only music that I still play from when I was very young is probably the music from The Art of Noise. Those CDs will find themselves in my players on a regular basis. Okay, that was my answer, and now back to the Q&A. Okay, so that was the first question. Let's put that away for now. We are making coffee, so what I'm going to do is to put a heat source onto the water. Is this working? I believe it is. Let's put it right over there. Another part of this machine is this bowl, and it comes with a little thing like this. Now this plug part is actually the filter. It has some grooves in here to let the water flow through. So what you do is, and you have this little chain, and the reason for the chain is because you can pull on it and then with a spring it will hold the filter in its place. So when the water comes up, the filter does not change position, it just stays there. And what you do is you just put it in here. Now this will make an airtight seal, and what is going to happen is the air in the bottom carafe is going to expand because it will heat up. It will push the water down because it is expanding, and the only way for the water to go is in the middle tube going upstairs, right over here, and over there is where you put your coffee. And that's it. So let's move on to the second question. And the second question is from another Terry Card. Terry, thank you very much for this question. And his question is, how did you first get into Hifi, and can you remember your very first system? So let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so this was already answered a bit by the previous question, but to make it complete, I guess my first serious system was the Musical Fidelity A1, together with the old KEF loudspeakers my parents left me, and the source was probably the Marantz CD10. Now the Marantz CD10 broke down too many times on me, so I did away with it, but if that thing had not died on me, I would probably still be using it today. It was built like a tank and it knew how to make the most out of any CD that you gave it. And I loved the looks of it. Now the first loudspeakers to replace the old KEFs were the Audiostatic ES100 Electrostats in bright red. Now Electrostats are something special. They will bring a spaciousness to the music that you don't get anywhere else. Most people are blown away when they first hear an Electrostat, but throughout the years I noticed that I was always feeling like something was missing. And I tried a lot of different amplifiers, but I could not get it to work. Well, work for me, that is. And at the end I decided probably it was so clean, so precise and so correct that it was also a bit boring. It was beautiful, but it was not musical. Well, not in a way that I liked. Now the Audiostatics were replaced by the Impulse H4 loudspeakers. This is the British Impulse and not the Dutch one. And funny enough, they also were a bottomless design, like my current Oscillius. But the Impulse is a two-way system and the Oscillia is of course a broadband system. Now the Musical Fidelity A1 I mentioned before was replaced by the Audionaut Auto integrated tube amplifier that I kept for a very long time because I loved it. And if I'm not mistaken, I replaced the Audionaut with my current ITOS setup, a transformerless tube design that is around 30 years old but still does a better job than all that went before it in my system. So once again you can see that I did not have a lot of changes in my system over the years, but to get to my decisions I listened to a lot of equipment throughout the years. And if you count all the hi-fi shows that I visited, I think you can say I heard a lot of equipment throughout the years. Now let's go back to the Q&A. This way of making coffee in the vacuum pot is a slow process. And that's why it is very useful for gatherings with the family and stuff like that. And that's why I'm not using it too much on a day-to-day basis, because it takes very long. And now I already started with the water being already a bit heated up. But especially if you start with cold water, this will take a very, very long time. So let's move on to question number 3. Now, this question comes from P. Soul. If you look at the comments, that is the name that he uses. And you know him because we did a room tour video of his system. So his question is, what recording is your best sounding to show off your 2-channel setup, e.a. your mono tube amps and oscillas, and if you have to give up one or the other, music or coffee, what would it be? Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, to start off with the second part of this question, could I do the rest of my life better without coffee or without my system? A tough one, of course, but I guess the coffee has to go. One reason is probably that I have been an audiophile for about 40 years now and a barista for maybe only 10 years. So my main hobby is still audio. So with that out of the way, let's go to the first part of your question. What is my favorite recording to show off my main setup? So when I have people over for the first time, I will start with some recordings that can give a good impression of all the things that my system can do. And after the initial impression, people can play whatever they brought with them or whatever they want to hear from my collection or from a streaming service if I don't have that song myself. Now, one of my recent favorites to start with, because this changes throughout the years, is Summertime from the Wailing Jennies. Now I have this song only on streaming at the moment, but this is my current favorite. It is a live recording, and in this song you only hear the 3 voices, no instruments. Their voices sound very nice together, and in a good hi-fi setup you can just see them standing next to each other singing this song for you. All 3 voices are easily separated from each other in the soundstage. You can hear their breathing, and somewhere in this song my guests will always sound off a little wow, because that is what this song does in my system. So that would be my first song to play. The last song I will play before giving control to my guests would be I'm Used to That from Roger Waters. I like to surprise people with sounds coming really from 90 degrees right or left of them instead of just in between the loudspeakers as most of them are used to. It is a little bit cheating because of the way it is recorded with Q sound, but it is a spectacle nonetheless. Some of the tracks will even demonstrate height in the soundstage. It will not be easy to get a more surround sound feeling from a stereo setup than you get from this CD. And in between those 2 CDs I will try to find some music that will fit their musical preference and does a good job on my system. Oh, and for those skeptics who might be thinking right now that a system should play every style of music very well, I agree of course, but you'll be spending a lot of money to create a setup that really does everything very well. And I've heard systems of up to $1.5 million, and I'm telling you, doing everything perfect, it doesn't come easy and it doesn't come cheap. Anyways, this question prompted me to pick out all the CDs that I like to play when people come to visit for the first time, and I will show those in a separate video. Now back to the Q&A. Okay, that was the answer. If we look here, there's already a little bit of water coming up, so we're almost there, just in time to do the last question for today, which is from a guy named Lightning Prod. Thank you very much for your question. And he says, my question for you is, if you total everything you have spent on all of your audio equipment to the present day, and you could buy one very high-end item, what would it be and why that one item in particular? Let's have a look at the answer. And that's a very nice question. Now, of course, I did not keep any records of all the money that I've spent. I mean, it's been over 40 years that I'm in this hobby. But if I were to make an educated guess, I'd probably end up at some 30,000 euros. So that would be some 750 euros a year. Well, that's probably fair. Now let's make it $1,000 a year, 1,000 euros a year, times 40, and we'll end up at 40,000 euros in total. Now, what can I buy for 40,000 euros today? What would I want to buy? Now if I look second-hand, and I have to because the piece that I would like to buy is not made anymore, but I would look for a set of Tannoy Westminster Royal SE loudspeakers. To me, this is one of the best sounding loudspeakers I have ever heard, and I think they also look absolutely fantastic. This is a real high quality piece of furniture, so I went online to check if there were any around, and I found a 6-year-old set in the Netherlands for 16,000 euros. And when these came out, they were some 40,000 euros, so that would be my pick. But as these are only 16,000, it leaves me with another 24,000 euros. Now what would I do with that? The amp that I would want to go with the Tannoys is the Ongaku integrated tube amplifier made by Audiophile Japan, or the newer version by Kondo Audio, also from Japan. But that one will set you back over 100,000 euros, so that's a no-go. Now looking for second-hand, I found one for 49,000 pounds, which adds up to some 55,000 euros. Also a no-go. So maybe I should replace my 30-year-old amplification with a brand new edition? Well, that's going to be a problem too. The preamp with phono section now costs 18,000 euros and a pair of 90-watt mono amps is 11,500 euro, while the 250 watts pair is 20,000 euros. So that would be 38,000 euros. So maybe that should be the one I should buy for 40,000 euros. Now let's go back to the Q&A. Okay, so those were the questions for today. Let's have a look at our coffee. So as you can see, slowly at the beginning, a little bit of the water has already gone up until this level. It will go all the way up here. And when it is all the way up there and the bottom carafe is almost empty, I will remove the heat source, which will mean that the hot air down here is going to cool down, which means it's going to collapse. Is that the correct word? Contract, creating a vacuum and pooling the coffee, I mean the water, which has now become the coffee because it was in contact with the water. It will pull the coffee down, and you will have something like a science experiment, having this going over there. We will see that in a few minutes. And then you can drink your coffee. Now, because there is already coffee over here, you need to have your grind settings need to be a little bit more coarse, because some of the coffee will be in contact with the water for a very long time. And if your grinds are too fine, you will end up with a coffee that is much too bitter or just not with a very satisfying taste. So as you can see, it is steadily rising. I believe the fire is still on. That's of course important. But this is something that you should do maybe in a sort of a meditative state. This is not a quick cup of coffee. And the taste is a bit similar like doing a French press. So it has a lot of body, you feel it in your mouth, and that feeling will stay with you for a long time. So slowly but surely you can see it's going up and up. Now, I told you a little bit about how important it was for me to have you as subscribers during this pandemic, because it's strange, but I'm a human being, and in times like this I really need the compliments that I'm getting from some of you guys. And I also can say that if I look at some of the comment sections on YouTube, which sometimes becomes a very, very messy, violent place, I think I can be proud of the fact that you, my subscribers, for 95% of the time are very kind, have compliments. You can be critical, but you do it in a very nice way. And there is, of course, always a few of those that are just, well, I'm not going to use that word, but you know, those obnoxious ones that you get there every now and then. At the beginning, that was something that could make me a little bit angry. You have been part of that. You have been coaching me to change that. And nowadays I found out that this is somebody who is just typing and then just one word, ridiculous. But if you start asking them questions, they don't have answers, and with one or two questions is mostly enough to make sure that they are gone and you never see them in the comment section again, because they have no content. So if you start asking questions, there is nothing there. Okay, slowly but surely we're coming to the point where the bottom carafe is almost empty. Oh, look. So now it's starting to suck in the air from downstairs, which will create a little bit of turbulence up here, which is okay. It's like steering the coffee, like you do in some of the other ways that you can set them, that you can make coffee. But I'm going to remove the heat source, close it, so it won't bother us anymore. And now what's starting to happen, of course, is the bottom carafe is cooling down. The air will contract, there will be a vacuum, and this will be pulled downstairs. Now this is the moment that you have to get everybody's attention on the table, because this is what it's all about. It stays up there, and then suddenly it goes down. There we go. If you look at the level over here, it's being sucked down. I love this. This is like a little science experiment. And over here, you see your glorious coffee coming up. This is a joy to watch. I could watch this every day. Imagine the family sitting around. And the coffee on top is really pretty dry when you take it off now, because this vacuum really works very good in pulling all the coffee down into the bottom carafe. Okay, this is more or less it. You get this nice little container to go with it. So you take off this one, and you need a place to put it. Well, that is where you put it. Get yourself your favorite cup and pour yourself a nice cup of coffee. And that's it. That is how the vacuum pot works. Pretty hot, pretty nice. To finish off this vlog, this Q&A, this celebration of 2,000 subscribers, as you know from my last few vlogs and a lot of promises about all the reviews coming up, I am still busy with those things, but with work and with what I said, some of the motivation problems. But here's my promise to you guys. Before the end of the year, this is what you can expect. First of all, I'm not going to name dates because I don't know. This is so, like today I filmed something, it took me all morning and the end result was 0 because I did not push the record button, and every now and then something happens that will demolish your system, your agenda. So we have the amplifier and the loudspeaker from Sound Artists, the ones that are inexpensive, a $100 loudspeaker and a $250 amplifier. That review is coming up before the end of the year. I have of course the LS35A, the BBC loudspeaker from Sound Artist, and that is also coming up this year. We have had some room tours this year, for 4 of them, where people film their own systems. I'll edit it into a movie. We had the Audiophile Monk, of course. I'll edit it into a movie and I'll show it to you. And I have 2 more coming up this year. And interestingly enough, these are 2 German guys. And what is very nice is that one of the guys is a more seasoned audiophile, which is another way for saying he's a little bit older, but also a very enthusiastic, young, upcoming audiophile. And that's what we like to hear, because we need young audiophiles to keep this hobby alive. So that's coming up. 2 room tours. The ITOS, my amplifier, preamp and double mono amp, they have just returned because they are repaired. But we will have this year the Q&A with the one who designed and builds these amplifiers. So that's coming up. This is not a movie channel, but I do like movies a lot. So I thought, well, why not pick out the movies that I have in my collection? That's the criterion. I have it in my collection, which are mostly based, or the music is a very important part of the film or the live concerts, because I have a lot of those also. So I'm going to show you in a video my favorite films and live performances that I have in my collection. The question from today, what is your favorite CD? That prompted me to think, well, I have a lot of CDs that I like to play, especially as a demonstration. So I'm picking all of them out of the room downstairs and I'm going to show them to you. That's another video. Of course, the weekly vlogs will stay. And another thing that just came up, because this is a Dutch guy, and he said, I have 2 systems in my house and I'm going to him in a few weeks to film. He said, I have 2 systems in my house. One you could call an American system, and the other one you could call a Chinese system. And he calls it like a little battle. Who is going to win? Also, interesting, one of these 2 systems, or let's say different, the price difference between these 2 systems is 8,000 euros. So one is a system, if I'm correct, of 1,000 euros, and the other is a system of 9,000 euros. And he wants to show the difference. So I'm going there, I'm going to film it, and it will be on the channel, which is, I think, very interesting. So that is the list of all the things that are coming up, and so you won't have to ask me anymore when do the reviews coming. They are coming this year, and this is the list that I promise you I will do. So for today, to all my subscribers, thank you very much. And this was today's vlog. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.